Why isn't it? There it goes. It's on.
Guys, thank you so much for coming out and staying for our next show. Our next performance is going to be by Richard Thomas, who is the Rick Blog. He's a former Second City alumni, and he will be having a show here in August, every Sunday night at the McKaw, and it's going to be a totally new format. But for now, I'd like to introduce you to Richard Thomas of the Rick Blog.
I want to wish everybody. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año felicidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad, prospero año felicidad. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Bum, 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 bum. Feliz Navidad. Everybody! Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año felicidad. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. You have to do that so I can go, oh, yes, I do. So, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. Oh, yes, I do. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. This evening's theme is joy. I have a few announcements to make before we start the show. Okay. This announcement, this is who is going to be at the Performing Arts Center this summer. Art Garfunkel, Art LaFleur with How to Audition, Channel 5's Art Norman, Making a Difference. A tribute to Art Fleming and Jeopardy. Artie Lang. The Artie Shaw Orchestra. Artie Johnson. Art Bell and Paranormal Experience. Arthur Agee and Hoop Dreams Remembered. Christopher Cross and music from the film Arthur. Arturo Sandoval. Arthur on Ice. And then, can you see this picture of Arthur? It's Arthur on Ice. And Hanson. See you at the center. Or some kind of center. Okay, I have some more. This is just a little housekeeping before we get into the show. Remember, the theme is joy. So, a little joy. A little more joy. Everybody want to do that now? You're going to feel foolish? Don't feel foolish. It's just us. This is on the Rick Blog video channel, by the way. This is all, and I'd like to say something to all my friends that watch the Rick Blog Live on the Rick Blog video channel, okay? And they like it. A couple of weeks, get like 200 views a week, but they never come here. You know why? Because my friends are old. You're old. Get off your ass. If you like the show, get your ass in a theater. There's other human beings here. You know what I mean? It's not all virtual. Social media, fine. Reality good. Get off your ass. And while we're talking, I also want to talk to my wife, who just had a long, arduous business trip. And I just want to tell you, honey, I'm sorry that you can't be here, but I have a bone to pick with you because I wanted to go see the movie Beguiled. Are you familiar with this movie? Sofia Coppola, you look enthusiastic about it. Do you want to see it?
I'm very excited to see it.
I'm very excited to see it too. Last week, we went to see Paris Can Wait. Paris Can Wait, did anybody see Paris Can Wait? No, because if you're not a 58-year-old woman, you didn't see that show, except for me. Because I thought my wife would like it, so we went to this movie. Okay. Paris Can Wait was directed by, and I think written by, Eleanor Coppola, who's Francis Ford Coppola's wife. And it's a story of a woman whose husband is a producer, and he's very successful in the film industry, and they're in France, and he's got to go somewhere, and she says, I'll meet you in Paris. And then there's this French guy who's his business partner, who takes a road trip with her, and they drive through the French countryside, and then they end up in Paris. And all along the way, you see pictures of, they're eating fancy pastries and looking at flowers that women find pretty, and they're looking at all these things. And the only thing that I could figure, here's my review of this movie. I think Eleanor Coppola was on a business trip with Francis Ford Coppola, and he had to go somewhere, and she fucked one of his business partners. So this is my review of Paris Can Wait. And I'll tell you something. If you haven't seen it yet, wait. Now, I'd like to see the Beguiled next. You want to see it too. Well, because the Beguiled, Sofia Coppola, I figure then, 2 movies in a row, we've seen a couple of Coppolas. So this is something that I like to see. But the whole thing, to me, that movie has everything. A Union soldier behind enemy lines in the South is injured, and he's found by this young girl who's in a finishing school, and she brings him back. And then there's all these teachers and students, and there's all this sexual tension. They all want to fuck this guy, and then they get jealous and they kill him. To me, that is a movie for the Trump era. So I really, because if you don't have sexual tension, and if you don't have violence in a movie, what the hell do you have? And I'm very seriously, I really want to see it. Back to the announcements. Now, I'm doing a show tonight. Of course, this is recorded, so it's not a live broadcast. But I'm doing a show tonight, June the 24th, at the McKaw Theater, which is in Rogers Park. It is this beautiful, beautiful 40-seat, just a jewel of a black box theater. But you're old. You got to put your feet up. You got to get out, and you have to do things, people. That's a warning to you. We have these wonderful young people here, and this is Rick. I'm rapping with the young people right now. And you could be too. But, polish your walkers, you sons of bitches. So, anyway, back to the show. So there's going to be a whole new format. This is very exciting. I was thrilled, and I'm not going to go into details with this, but starting in August, because there's going to be a hiatus, and then starting in August, Sunday night is going to be the Rick Blog night at the McKaw, and we're going to have a completely new format. It's going to be different, and we're doing it every Sunday, with the exception of a few, like when the theater's rented out or something, or holidays or whatever. So that's an announcement we have to make. Now, what I'm doing next is I'm driving out to California. And I'm going to be performing at Jane Morris's and Jeff Michalski's Fanatic Salon Theater in Culver City, California at 8 p.m. on Friday, July the 7th. And any of you who are watching in California, that it's really no excuse. You still should have made your way to Rogers Park to see this show. But if you're watching in California, you should come see my show. Because It's a brilliant show, as you can see. It's a lot of talking about the next show in my show. So the main thing is that I have to see the show is in California. It's in Los Angeles. Now California is a free state, but I have to drive through several slave states to get there. So as I travel, I'm going to be traveling as Rick Thomas, plumbing and supply salesman from Peoria. I am not letting anybody know that I have anything to do with the arts, or that I hate Donald Trump, or anything else. Because they'll say, let's kill the queer. I mean, I really now I'm looking forward to. There's a lot of blue dots in those red states, and I'm looking forward to running into people like that. But these people are a fucking problem. That's why today's theme to the Rick Blog Live Show is joy, because the world is completely fucked right now, really, really bad, and it's getting a lot worse. So how are we gonna deal with this, and how are we gonna eventually prevail? First step, we have to have joy. So I'm telling you that. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad. No, things are fine. Things are fine. So I'm driving a Kia Soul because I'm a highly successful person. So I have a Kia Soul, and I'm going to tell you something. If somebody says, "Well, that's a Korean car," I'm just going to deny it, because these assholes, they love that. You say, "Oh, the sky is green." No, the sky is blue. Oh no, it isn't. It's green. Oh really? Okay. So they love the denial. They love the fake news, as it were. 1,000 points of light, everybody. By the way, these jokes, comedy. Everybody says, like these jokes. Now, somebody would say, like, oh, some of these jokes are very funny, like this art thing, the performing arts. They say, oh, that's funny. I don't know. I think they make a big deal out of funny. Jerry Seinfeld, right? I like Jerry Seinfeld. But Jerry Seinfeld says, I work for months or years. I work for years to hone a routine. I polish a joke, and I make sure it's the exact number of words. What the fuck are you working on? What is it? It's a joke. It's a joke. My father would go, bah, when I was 3 years old, and I'd laugh. What's the big fucking deal? Anyway, it's got to be more than comedy, my friends. It's got to be more than comedy. It's got to be more than comedy. And you know it. Those of you who are watching this online, you know what I'm doing. You know what I'm about. Do you love America? Do you love this country? Then you should be here. That made perfect sense. All right. Okay. Now this is the Rick Blog Live. So what I do with the Rick Blog Live is I read blog posts and then improvise off of them. So here's a rule. I know we have improvisers here. Here's the first rule. Comedy does not have to be funny. Okay. I don't advocate violence, but I would never use violence personally in our struggle. Okay? This is called Why I'm Against the Use of Violence in Our Struggle. And we are in a fucking struggle. Did you see what happened this week with the healthcare bill? Did you follow that? Did any of you? You're kind of looking at me like you don't know. A terrible thing happened this week. The Senate, the House has already passed it. They passed it. They haven't passed it yet, but they proposed this horrible bill, which is basically going to gut Medicaid. 24 million people in America, more than that actually, but they're going to keep little parts of it. But 24 million people are going to be without Medicaid. Those are old people in old folks' homes. Those are people mothers giving birth to children. Those are poor people that wouldn't get any medical attention if it weren't for Medicaid. They're gutting this program. they're doing a lot of other bad things with this bill too, and a lot of other bad things in this administration and in this Congress. But you know what that is, in my book? That's an act of war. Okay? This is the thing, this is why Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, better be joyful. I know we got improvisers in here. It's important for you to bring the funny because people need the funny and they need the community and they need the improv. It's really important. We all have to do our part because these people want to kill us. And that's no exaggeration. None. The Nazis have nothing on these people. Okay. They truly don't. 24 million people off. Do you know, I heard Bernie Sanders on TV. He said thousands of people are going to die. More than thousands of people are going to die. Millions of people are going to die. Old people are going to go into their children's basements. People in wheelchairs are going to lose mobility. Poor people aren't going to get medical care and are going to literally die in the streets. This is what they're doing. And people, you know, and I have to say this to my friends. It said it was hyperbole when I compared these people to Nazis. Hyperbole, exaggeration, comparing these people to Nazis. These people are Nazis. The Nazis had nothing on them. In the 1940s, Hitler used industrialization. He built factories to have the Holocaust and kill the Jews. They're doing it with financial instruments. They hate us. They are not, oh, well, we all have to get along, we got to compromise, all this shit that you hear in the media. There's no compromise. They are our enemies. They want us dead. And if we're alive, they want us to be miserable. Everything they say and everything they do adds up to that. And that's why I'm standing here right now and saying that we have to fight them in every way that we can, every way that's true and every way that's ethical, short of violence. Because I'll tell you something, I think violence is going to happen. It is. When people, there already was a demonstration in the Capitol building where a bunch of people came in wheelchairs. Did anybody see this on the news? They're in wheelchairs and they're like screaming. They're outside Mitch McConnell's office and they're screaming because all the services that they need are being taken away from them. It's an assault on their lives. It's an assault on their human dignity. And they're protesting. You know, they've just like gone, when you let a bully keep going and you never stop them, and the Democratic Party has never stood up to them. I'm sorry. We got to do it ourselves. The Democrats aren't going to do it. Because the Democratic Party has never stood up to them. And you let this bully get bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, finally, when a bully reaches his full potential, he becomes a mass murderer. And that's what we have now. But here's the reason why I advocate nonviolence. First of all, I think it's wrong to be violent. Second of all, it's self-protection. I don't know if any of you follow my blog or watch these videos or listen to my podcast. I say real strong things against this administration all the time. I do not want to be tagged like that I'm like that nutcase that one shot that congressman in softball practice. I do not, you know, it's self-protection. And you have to have self-protection too. You can't be stupid about it. It would be stupid to be violent. So it's wrong, it's stupid, and also it's impractical. We don't win that way. They're better at it than we are. And they have a hell of a lot more muscle than we do. So what do we have to do? We got to do our thing. And we got to do our thing in opposition and in defiance, not resist. They always say resist. Fuck resist. Revolt. It's not a legitimate government anyway. They stole it. I mean, they had help from the Russians and everything else. This is bullshit. Now is the point where we do not have the option of just going along with our lives and saying that we're not interested in politics. This isn't about politics. It truly isn't. I don't give a shit about politics. This is about two things. It's about morality and it's about survival. So a big thing that the Rick blog is trying to do, a big purpose that I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm trying to figure this out as an ordinary guy. I don't write for fucking Esquire magazine. I'm not on the staff of the New York Times. I'm an ordinary person. And I want to figure out what the hell we can do to stop this, because this is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to take old people and sick people and severely disabled people and toss them in the street. That is not America. That is what Nazis do. And it's not an exaggeration. There is no common ground with these people anymore. They have to be defeated. If it were 1860, right before the Civil War, I would have been an abolitionist. I would have said, enough is enough. You would have to be a complete asshole to come up with any justification for slavery. And you'd be a complete asshole, which the Democrats are, to come up with any compromise with it. And this is just as bad. In America right now, we have political leaders and a lot of people who follow them, white people like me, white middle-aged people like me, that have fucked up value systems. You know, it's like, for example, every time you're a Democratic congressman, they say, well, listen, we have to have health care for hardworking people. What about lazy people? Does a lazy person deserve health care? Are we human beings? And first of all, that's such bullshit, because many people who aren't working because they have no opportunity to work. Let's fucking face it. But they don't want to take responsibility for anything. And that is what people of my tribe, that's the way they think. That's what I grew up around. And I'll tell you, a long time ago, even before Trump, now everything's exaggerated, I have to say that I thought they were wrong, like when I was 18 years old. It's just not right. What's going on in this country is not right. We are even past the point of democratic debate. Look, it might as well happen sooner or later, and we might as well get educated and do it nonviolently. But now, we're at war. This is a war. And that attitude that's behind that healthcare bill is something that has to be stopped. That attitude that goes to a Trump rally and cheers when he says that reporters should be thrown out, or when he mocks handicapped people, or when he encourages violence and a 60-year-old woman on an oxygen. I always use this example because it really struck me. He's having a rally, and he's saying, you know, in the old days, what we did is when these protesters came, we just beat them up. And they beat up a woman who was 60 years old on an oxygen machine. This is not acceptable. It has to stop. But you know, another thing about violence, which is stupid, is that violence is about grabbing power. It's about being frustrated that somebody else has power. And going after those people so that you can have power. So if you use violence, what's the result of violence? You end up being the new bully. And then you don't solve anything. We have examples of what to do, by the way. In the 20th century, violent warfare became passé. The idea was actually in the 19th century. Henry David Thoreau wrote on civil disobedience, which talked about not cooperating with an immoral government. It was at the time of the Mexican-American War. He refused to pay his taxes. He ended up getting thrown in jail. Gandhi took those ideas and he used them in India. The Indian Revolution, England, I mean, it was horrible and everything else, but it was not violent. Martin Luther King did it in the United States. We have examples where it is not violent. If we get violent, we're going to lose. And I really fear that what's going to happen is that we're going to have tremendous violence in this country. Because you can't have this constant injustice and just ratcheting it up and making life tougher and tougher and tougher for people and then not expect a violent response. So I'm against violence. But I also think, and this is where you guys come in, particularly since this is a group of artists, and so are you, most of you, this is going to require great creativity. Because the difference between what Gandhi dealt with and what Martin Luther King dealt with is we are at a moment of tremendous cultural complexity and technological development. Like, it's extraordinary. We can learn from history, we can learn the spirit from history, but we have to figure out how to do this ourselves. Because America is not the America it was in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement, and the world isn't the world it was in the 1930s and 40s. Was it the 40s? With Gandhi. When was Gandhi's revolution? Anybody know? The 40s. 40s. It's not what it was in the 40s. Okay. How long have I been up here? I know, it's like it's a small crowd. And so let me just wrap this up. I'm going to skip ahead to what I think is, I didn't even know, but somebody told me that this was a poem. And I'm just going to read it, and then we're all going to sing Feliz Navidad again. All right, this is it. The world dies slowly. The world is being murdered slowly. The apocalypse will not be executed in a sudden rain of nuclear bombs. The world is a terminal cancer case in hospice. Some well-meaning people attempt to keep it comfortable, mostly with sense-numbing drugs, but each day mankind grows weaker. We grow accustomed to the waning of life until we forget that it's happening. We go about our daily lives, enjoy a movie and a nice meal at an inexpensive restaurant, everyday stuff. We check in on the world regularly. We bring it some warmth and affection. We protect it from everyday indignities as much as we can. And then we go home. We even begin to believe that things will always proceed in this sad and pleasant way. Then one day, with no fanfare or warning, the world will slip away, and there will be only darkness. Nothing will matter. No one will be left to remember. We chose to die. I was reading an article in the New York Times on Friday, June 16th, 2017, about a guy who worked with Paul Manafort, who was Trump's first campaign manager, who's now under investigation by Robert Mueller, who's the special counsel who's investigating a whole bunch of crimes by Trump and his associates. As the Trump campaign and administration continues to be revealed as an ever-widening criminal conspiracy. None of this seems particularly new, But tucked in the article, in an undeveloped aside, is a brief paragraph about Tad Devine, who was Bernie Sanders' campaign manager. The Times reports that Devine worked with Manafort, who is really in deep trouble for working with all these Russian autocrats and Ukrainian oligarchs and everything else. Devine, Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, worked with Manafort, advising the future president of the Ukraine, which at the time he was the future president. Now he's the president. He's a dictator. And he's also an ally of Vladimir Putin. This was Tad Devine, Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, and he was working with this guy before he got elected. Devine eventually quit. He quit the job. When the dictator won, the guy won the election, and then he jailed his electoral opponent. Remember, lock her up, lock her up. Well, that's what dictators do. They lock up the political opposition. So when Devine saw that, he quit, and this was 2012. I guess Devine's resignation at that late date passes as evidence of a moral compass as the world takes shallow breaths while drowsy on a morphine drip. Tad Devine isn't exceptionally evil. He makes a living. He's trying to get rich. He's made a name for himself. He's famous in his field. He's an accomplished professional. He probably sits on the boards of theaters or hospitals. He speaks at conferences and he appears on TV. And that is what is killing us. Everyone is carving out a niche. Carving out a niche. Bernie Sanders took years to build a brand as a successful American socialist. Catch the irony? He's building a brand, a marketing term, as a socialist. It's a very good business. And everyone carves. And everyone bleeds to death. This piece isn't about Tad Devine, and it's not about Bernie Sanders. It's not about Paul Manafort, and it's not about Donald Trump. This diagnosis is bigger than any individual. The only reason that I ever worked a job was either to make a living or because I loved what I was doing. I sometimes felt conflicted or ashamed about not pursuing success more aggressively, but I couldn't do it. Something inside me stopped me from doing so. And now I know why. I sense something. The pursuit of success is killing the world. A good writer is suspicious of both skepticism and praise for his words. So is a good person. The words and the life just are. The world is pure in its essence and self-regulating. If every person were satisfied with who they were and acted out of their particular being, mankind would be in harmony. But we choose to perform before each other and use the applause as a means of self-indulgence and domination. Mankind is dying of narcissism. We can't place our attention and resources in the service of the necessities of maintaining life because we are addicted to self-aggrandizement. There is plenty of everything that we need, but we hoard it and withhold it from the rest of ourselves in an attempt to prove that we are special and better than the rest of ourselves. Purity is mocked as being unrealistic, but reality is pure. And the so-called real world is an insane hallucination. The acceptance of the success of the few is the murder-suicide of the many. The world's salvation lies in a mass spiritual transformation that seems impossible, but who knows? Sometimes people do the right thing when they are facing extinction. But what will happen when Armageddon is occurring so slowly that it is perceptible to only a few? The Holocaust of the 1940s was carried out in the death factories in Germany. Today's Holocaust is being carried out in the banks in New York. Industrialization has been replaced by financial instruments. The horrors of our time aren't as crude as gas chambers. They are more subtle, like poor schools and the denial of good food, water, and accessible health care. But they are just as lethal. Modern Holocaust deniers refuse to admit how bad things really are. Our petty concerns with our own successes and failures is our way of denying the current Holocaust. Hope, get over yourself and be yourself, and hope others follow your example. And the Rick blog is really looking for answers, not as an expert, but the Rick blog, me, I'm looking for answers, and I'm not fully formed at all, but there's one thing that I know. One thing that we need is joy. You know, I'm an older person. You know, it's like doing improv or whatever. When I was young and I was improvised, I'd have this thrill. It was complete joy. I intellectually knew that I was going to die. But I didn't know it spiritually. I didn't know it was emotionally. When I realized it, I stopped being a good improviser for a good while. And I started being an improviser again when I realized that real joy, the best joy, is when, so we're on the last line here, the best joy is when you know you're going to die. And when you know that your joy can be good for other people. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año felicidad. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Oh, stage manager's gone. Thank you.